Hello and welcome to Camp Xbox, where we talk about all things Xbox from the original to the Series X. And today we are doing a video on the Xbox 360 launch title, Kameo: Elements of Power, published by Microsoft Game Studios and developed by the legendary Rare. Kameo came out in North America November 22nd, 2005, just in time for the launch of the Xbox 360 and was an exclusive for the console. Kameo is a very interesting game in the launch lineup, with not a lot of games like it on the 360 at the start. Even with Rare having another game on the same launch lineup with Perfect Dark Zero, it still doesn't compare even to that one. Kameo is a game with a tumultuous history and development cycle till its launch, and since then seems to have gone down as one of Rare's forgotten games. But today I wanted to play it and review it, let you all know my opinions, and I wanted to give you some history along the way. If you enjoy this video, be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already and you want to enjoy more content from me. But let's go ahead and hop into Kameo: Elements of Power. Kameo: Elements of Power, during its development cycle, went through 4 different consoles, starting all the way back on the Nintendo 64. Kameo was quickly started after Rare released Donkey Kong 64 on November 22, 1999, exactly 6 years prior to Kameo's official release. What started as a riff on the Pokemon formula of catching animals and breeding them, Kameo would later push development into the GameCube, the next generation, but after Microsoft's acquisition of Rare, development was ported over to the original Xbox. And at some point along this path, Kameo transitioned into something completely different. Now Kameo would be able to transform into multiple beasts and use them strategically to solve world puzzles. Kameo became something in the vein of the classic Rare platformer style, an open world that is split into multiple subworlds with collectibles to get along the way. Near the end of its production, at almost 80% being finished, Kameo moved over to the Xbox 360, and instead of restarting the entire production, they decided to just make minor improvements to flesh out the game. So years down the line, we finally received Kameo: Elements of Power as an Xbox 360 launch title. I, however, did not pick this game up on launch and didn't play it for some time. I did play it when it was added to Rare Replay in 2015, but maybe played for about 15 minutes. But now I wanted to give it a shot, and it seemed like a really interesting game with an interesting history, and I wanted to see how it held up almost 20 years after its release. Kameo, upon starting up, throws you directly into the thick of it. You are playing as a Yeti, hanging on an ice wall in the middle of a dungeon with lots of fire being thrown at you. With only a slight tutorial, you are tasked with fighting enemies and attempting to reach the finale of this dungeon. It's honestly a little jarring, but I do think it works well for this game. It introduces the core action of the game in a very fast manner. It tells you what the game is, and how you will be playing it in only a matter of minutes. I will say I would have appreciated a bit more of a nice intro cutscene to transition us into this, but I think it serves the game pretty well, and I found it intriguing. Rather than having a long, boring opening tutorial, it says, hey, this is the game and this is how you're going to play it. And after this, you'll get introduced to how this level is laid out, and it feels like a classic adventure game. You are tasked with moving from different themed areas, such as Iceland, swamps, and forests, to collect different elements that you can transform into. Using these different elements, you are able to unlock dungeons to save your family, and eventually take down your sister and the evil troll Thorn. Plot-wise, it's as simple as you can get for a fantasy game. Kameo is given all of the powers for elemental switching from her father, and her sister Thena becomes jealous because she doesn't get any of these powers. She then decides to team up with the troll Thorn. They work together to take over and destroy the Enchanted Kingdom. Along the way, Kameo learns about her family's history, getting stronger and stronger, and when you have collected all 10 elements, you are strong enough to fight the troll army ahead of you. It's a plot that I honestly don't think is presented very well. It might be the weakest element of this game. I prefer world building passively, not by lengthy dialogue, but here talking to characters is just getting a wall of text to read and listen to. It feels like forever when you sit and talk with someone, and it's just a huge lore dump at you, and it's so much so that it's too much and it gets tiring. I think the cutscenes do it the best here. There's a lot less talking and it's more of a visual representation of plot points. Maybe it just doesn't help that the lore honestly isn't that interesting either, feeling like something that I had seen before in many other fantasy stories. The lead character Kameo also doesn't help. She's very one note, and though she is not a silent protagonist, she still has nothing interesting to say or add to the story. I think the plot here is quite weak, if you can't tell, and I can only think that maybe it was because it was cobbled together over different console changes and such a crazy development cycle. Yet, even with these issues with the plot, this is my only major gripe of Kameo. I think everything else in this is actually really interesting and well done. Playing as Kameo and her different elements feels excellent. Kameo can fly and kick, but other than that, she's very limited. When you can actually quickly swap between all 10 of the elements, that's when everything starts to come together. I actually find it insane the amount of detail each of these elements get. Each of them have specific movesets and upgrades that go deep enough to where you feel like each of them has something different to add to the game. It never really feels like a copy and paste. Like, one of the first ones you get is Chilla, a yeti that can climb up ice, grab and throw enemies, as well as throw ice projectiles, all of which, surprisingly enough, come in handy at many points within my playthrough. Another one is Snare, which is a plant that can bite and throw enemies, which can come in handy late in the game when a boss shows up that needs exploding creatures spit on him in order for him to get damaged. I guess what I found fascinating was that all the creatures felt good to control and all added something to the core gameplay. I feel like every character got its time to shine, except for maybe the last few you get right before the final boss. With Thermite, who you get literally at the very end, you can throw bombs, and it can be crazy overpowered, and I feel like if we got him early in the game, it would just ruin the whole game. But the final dungeon of this game gets really good use out of him, so I think they tried their best to make sure everyone had their time to shine. Puzzle solving with all of them leads to some really interesting solutions. My only thing is, I would have liked to see more puzzles that could have been more creatively solved rather than only one creature being needed and used. It would have spiced up the gameplay just a little bit more if I could swap between multiple characters for multiple solutions. But even with that, I do like that you have a lot of open world to explore. For an early 360 game, the amount of space that you explore is actually grand. The main area that connects all the subworlds is huge, and thousands of troll enemies are rendered at one time with 0 frame rate issues whatsoever. There are collectibles to be found all over the place, and I had a fun time searching through all the nooks and crannies to get them all. Luckily, collecting all of these was not as overwhelming as some other rare games, and I think it had a solid amount to get. This game took me around 8 hours to beat and find everything in, and I think that's a perfectly solid amount of hours of playtime. Graphically, I really like the look of this game. For 2005, I think a lot of the particle work and creature design looks good. Each looks unique, and the worlds themselves are all distinct from each other. grass looks solid, and the lighting in this is stunning for a game that is almost reaching 20 years old. I really love the vivid color palette that Kameo has. It's bright and full of greens and bright purples. Moving into the 360 generation, colors were starting to get drab, and we'll see that a lot later. But here, it's a solid start with something that looks striking and pretty. Visually, altogether, I think this game has a consistent and solid tone to it that gets you right into that fantasy setting. The music adds to this too. Steve Burke worked as composer on this game, and it's actually Rare's first orchestral soundtrack, and I think it sounds fantastic. It's huge and sweeping, offering something like the Lord of the Rings soundtrack. It's loud and bombastic, and there's a nice melody that plays throughout that just pops up from time to time, and it really gets you in the mood to keep playing. Anytime I was in a dungeon and the music started to kick up, it felt incredible. And I actually think the music has stood the test of time more than some other things within this game. Now, getting into achievements, this game has easy ones, and then there's some later ones that are quite a struggle. For the most part, 70% of them are extremely easy. They just ask you to collect everything, play the story, and beat bosses in co-op. You will get 700 gamer score if you just play through this game. But what's difficult here is the last remaining achievements. See, this game has a high score mode that tasks you with getting A rank in each dungeon. Dungeons themselves are not hard, but the scoring system is highly convoluted, where there are 3 multipliers for doing different things, and one hit will remove some ticks off of that. So you have to attack fast, you can't get hit, and that's how you keep the score up. But this sounds rudimentary, this sounds like all right, but the A rank score is insanely high, asking for astronomical numbers that you have to sit and grind to get up high. And I don't really think that's fun. I think that's a very missed opportunity. You should get an A if you don't get hit and you get a decent score, but here it asks you to sit for 5 turns and just grind on enemies. That's not enjoyable to me. Oh, and this game also features a ton of 0 gamer score achievements, which is super weird. I think it's just something that was very common at the start of the Xbox 360 because gamer score was such a new concept. But here's the thing. Achievements, as always, don't make or break a game. I just like hunting them and giving you the lowdown on them. Otherwise, contemporary reviews were mixed to positive, with a lot of compliments going out to the graphics and the overall creativity of the game. Some of the criticisms were that the controls were rough and the game was a little repetitive. Official Xbox Magazine, they gave it an 8.5 out of 10, saying that it wasn't genre smashing, but it was still a really fun game. Unfortunately, despite having positive reviews, this game did not sell well at all, and it led to the cancellation of its sequel, leaving this franchise at only 1 game. In conclusion, as for my opinion, I find this game to be a really fun puzzle platformer. It has a great amount of variety, especially with each character feeling unique to play. The music is excellent, and the game looks really good for its time period. Even if I didn't like the story, I still found the game to be entertaining enough to keep me going till its finale. I highly recommend playing this one if you haven't before. It's available on Game Pass, it's backwards compatible, it is really easy to get. And on my ranking list of Xbox 360 games that I have reviewed on the channel, Kameo comes in at number 6. I think I would put it above Condemned 2 because I think I've built more lasting memories out of the Kameo campaign experience. But Halo Wars is just a bit better because I do think that's a really standout RTS experience on the Xbox. But that wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. If you have any comments about Kameo or maybe even Rare games, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. But I'll see you here next time at Camp Xbox.